Okay, we have the stream up and running. So let's see where I picked up, or rather left off. Before I had some issues with some shakiness with the arms and not being able to limit the up and down rate. I solved that by remembering that whenever you pass the 0 point on the x-axis, it then begins to go up starting at 360 rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes 360, 359, and so on. So I just added this quick check here that if the degrees are above 180, then subtract 360, and that essentially makes it a signed angle. So if you need to limit your angles with Euler's, this is a really good way to do it. Secondly, I noticed there were some issues with the air dampening. Whenever I would move my client around, I noticed that it would be restricted to the air dampening, even if it weren't supposed to be, and the server would be fine. So for now, I have disabled that code, and I'll have to revisit it again at a later time. Working on getting a build here. I also found an issue with the movement, which I have worked out. Just going to show you real quick. All right, so right now, this is a build and the right side is client. Let me actually open up, Clumsy here so I have a little bit of delay. Give me 1 second. If you don't know, Clumsy is a way to simulate network latency. And I'll just show you that real quick. You might find that useful. You can get it on Git. You want to set the presets to IPv6 all. And thanks Maxoon for telling me that. He was the one that informed me of it. You'll hit start, set whichever feature you want basically. And I generally only use the outbound when I'm using lag, and 50 milliseconds will be applied to both the server and the client. So it's a little unrealistic in that sense because it's applying it to the server as well. But you get what you get, and it still works pretty good. Let me get a new build up. Also, if my mic audio doesn't sound great, let me know, but I did adjust it, so hopefully it'll be good. Yeah, that might actually lag the YouTube stream, you're right. That's a good point. I was running it last time though, and no one complained, so I don't know. I'll turn it off after I show you this change here real quick though, just in case. All right, so you might notice here real quick that whenever my client logged in, it kind of shot up and down. That's something else I did to the camera. I will adjust that later, but I'll talk about that in a moment. So I have my character, and you can see it's moving really, really smoothly now. And I'm passing over bumps here, and you can see that's going up and down. It looks pretty good. Everything is working really nicely, and this is with 128 ping and server authoritative. So I got a lot of those issues worked out. I actually had more that I ran into between the last stream and the current one, which I already fixed. So real quick, just to show you what I did to the camera, is I added a positional smoothing option. And I tried it with both this on and off, and it didn't really, I didn't notice a difference, which is actually really good. That means it's essentially working pretty well. What it does though is it takes the desired position of the camera, and then it just moves towards it using a smoothing algorithm, which is pretty basic. It just calculates the distance, and it chooses the max between 1f and the distance, because I want to always move at a minimum of the move rate. And then it just moves towards that position, which is the player with the offset. So the reason I do this is in the rare scenario that something does desync and it's just a slight desync, I don't want the player to see that hiccup. Because if I lock the camera into the position on every frame, you're going to see the hiccup. But however, if I smooth it, you won't. The downside, which isn't really much of one, is that the camera will always be slightly behind. However, it's a very, very minimal amount. So if I actually go back to my editor here, hit play, I'm going to run as a client host, and I'm going to actually turn on the body. Let me adjust my scene view. You can see it does bob a little on the jump because the jump has a lot of force on it. So I might actually increase the catch-up rate based on distance a little more, but when I'm moving, it's pretty much on point. I'm not too worried about that right now. If I find it to be an issue later though, I will adjust it. Another issue I noticed that you might also run into if you're developing a controller using the character controller component is that I was applying movement using multiple calls to the character controller in a single fixed update. So what I mean by that is, and this is something I haven't yet tweaked yet, I'll have to include this. For example, I have apply external forces, which will apply what I'm calling them external forces, but they're basically movement actions that are performed outside the motor. And this is for things like if you want to knock the player back on the server. You don't necessarily have to like code that into the motor itself. The external forces will behave a lot like a rigid body in that sense, and it'll just apply them. However, the external forces were being applied right as the inputs were being applied. So this was actually calling my move method. Because if I actually go back down to this real quick, you'll see it's calling controller.move, and it's passing in the external forces. However, I have another move method which is used the input, and that's also calling control.move, and that was happening in one frame. I thought this would be okay because if you do this with transforms and maybe even rigid bodies, it tends to work okay. So for example, if I apply gravity first in one method, and then I apply maybe like any abilities in the next and then normal moving in the next, it just stacks together and it works fine at the end of the frame. However, with the character controller, it doesn't like that. If you call multiple moves in a single frame, they kind of fight each other, and I don't really know how to describe it because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it's not good. So I was applying the gravity first, I believe, and in result, it was causing the character input to actually move slower than it should have, and that's when I realized that was another issue. So in result, what I decided to do is I applied the vertical velocity to the Y of the move after, or rather as well, when I was applying the move input, so that it was all sent in one frame and I wasn't calling controller.move multiple times. And the external forces still do that, but right now I don't actually have any running, so it's not gonna reach this code. But that is something to keep in mind if you're running a character controller. So what else did I do? I was busy this morning. I completely forgot. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I did notice one other issue I'd have to take care of, which I didn't really cover in the past. Whenever I do a rollback, so let me just show you real quick. Void process server. Nope, I can't remember the name of my method. Let me just go check. Oh, it's in fixed update. Okay. Basically what I do here, this is the server authoritative movement, by the way, is I send my inputs to the server, it applies the movement, and it has like an index that I send with it. And whenever I get that back, I basically set my client character to that position result that was on the server, and any inputs I've sent since that index are reapplied. And then this is actually old code, I don't need this. It is reapplied, which should in return catch me up to my current position. However, if there's a desync, it will maybe potentially be slightly off. So what I do is I will, instead of setting my character position, I set a target position, and then I move smoothly to that position. So basically what that's doing is if my character does desync, let's say 0.1 units on X or whatever, then what will happen is my character won't snap to that position. It has to get there to remain in server authoritative movement, but it won't snap to that position. It will instead set that as a target position, and then over the next few frames, it will move towards that position. And this math here basically accelerates it based on distance, and it also uses the delta time divided by the fixed delta time, which is essentially, since I know that I'm sending a packet every fixed delta time, I know that it's going to be updated after that. Also, updates called after fixed update, so that's a part of the equation. I know this math stuff's probably really boring, but for anyone curious, just explaining how I do it. This achieves two things though. One, it helps prevent snapping when you do desync, and it will catch up seamlessly, which is really nice. Secondly, if I am moving my character only in fixed update, then that means my character is running at 50 FPS. The mouse stuff works fine. If I were to like look around, that'd be, you know, whatever refresh rate you're running at and your monitor and GPU and whatever can handle. If you see other units move, they would also be at the normal refresh rate because their movement would be smooth. However, if you were to jump or move, your input would be seen at 50 FPS. And I talked about this before where I was seeing the jitter and I wasn't sure if it was the code or the FPS, and it was actually the FPS. My eyes are really sensitive to low frames. I can usually notice jitter up to about 120 FPS. I can tell differences a little bit sometimes beyond that, but not much. So essentially what I did is by setting a target and then smoothing to it, I'm using those extra frames between fixed update to smooth out the movement, which gives me the benefit of being able to lock all my sync code in fixed update, which is great for reliability, but also giving me the smoothing I need of a high performance CPU or a computer. Well, from here, I know there's some things I need to fix still. Like I want to make the gravity be applied to the movement a little bit better. I just kind of whipped that up at the end. I also need to work on the external forces. But before all of that, I think what I need to do here is tidy up my code, because I've been doing a lot of work and not much optimization or refactoring. So it's a little messy in some parts, like this, or like the code you just saw me comment out a moment ago. This is completely broken right now, so I need to do some cleanup. And let me turn off clumsy here, because I can see my stream thing throwing warnings at me on the left here, and it's probably because of this. So let's see, where should I begin? I think I need to go to the user input script. Okay. So this is, I'm just going to change where this is at and what order. I know it's really dumb, but I added the rotation last, and I'd prefer it to be before the action codes. And also, I think I'm going to throw in a position. So the rotation is what I use to synchronize other clients to the server. Position won't be used, but if I want, I can use it to help ensure that the client isn't trying to speed hack. So if the client moves, let's say, steadily or very frequently tries to move well beyond their move speed on the server, even though it's server authoritative and it locks them into place on their end, I can still use that information to potentially kick that client if I think they're cheating. So I'm going to drop that in. Even though it's not used right now, I will drop that in. All right, so let's go back to the code where I'm going to have a bunch of errors. Okay, I guess I'm only going to have one error. There is something else I actually want to move in or put in here too, and that's going to be the move speed. The reason for that is because I told you when I roll back inputs, I also reapply them. And right now, it just reapplies inputs at the default move speed. However, if I have variable move speeds, I'm going to have to pass that into the inputs as well so that I can roll that back and whatnot and apply the right speeds. The server won't listen to this data. This is all local stuff. I could probably save a little bandwidth and only store this locally. But for now, I'm just going to throw it on here because I don't want to go through the effort of making a new collection and managing that collection. So at the cost of a little extra bandwidth right now, I'm going to keep it fairly simple and just throw it in here. And of course, I'll probably optimize that at a later time. So let's see, float move rate. Okay, so I'm going to float move rate. All right, so right now, what did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot the semicolon. Right now, position's not being used and move rate's not being used, but it will in a future change here. So a huge part of the server authoritative movement and making sure that everything stays in sync and you don't have to worry about jittering and things like that is mimicking the behavior on the client and the server exactly as it is. But another big issue is that you have to roll back your inputs and reapply them whenever the server updates you on your current position. And that by far is the hardest part because you have to consider whether you have to apply additional forces between each input. So let me give you an example of that. So right here, this is where I'm catching up to inputs that I applied after I got the server response. And you can see I'm applying fall because fall is applied every fixed update and inputs are gathered every fixed update. So essentially, anything I do in a fixed update that is tick-based, I have to redo it per frame after I roll back or per input. All right, so there was something else I really wanted to clean up and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. I'm gonna do a quick test build here just to make sure everything's still working right. That's one thing I strongly recommend if you're able to do test builds pretty regularly whenever you make any change to something that might be impactful. Go ahead and do it. Don't wait until later because you'll want to know where exactly you're having problems. And on a small project like this, it only takes like a minute to test, so why not, All right, everything seems to be okay. Again, I'm not running Clumsy, so perhaps I'll go open that up again real quick and just simulate it super fast. All right, so I have the latency going. Seems to still be okay. All right, let me go ahead and turn off Clumsy here. All right, perfect. I actually made notes inside my Git here, so let me just take a quick look at that. Okay, so I don't actually see anything else that has to be done. I could have sworn I had more things to do, but maybe not. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this. What this was before is this is when I was seeing the hitching whenever I was moving at 60 FPS, and that's where I wasn't sure if it were the frame rate or something else, and it actually just turned out to be the frame rate. So I don't need any of this code. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to just do set transform position server result dot position. And basically what that does is it just sets the transform position, and if update physics transforms, then it will call physics sync transforms. That way, if you don't notice already, if you change your position of a physics object, like the character controller or a rigid body, then the position won't actually update on the physics engine until the next fixed update. However, you can force it using this. The reason this is important information is because I roll back my character to the server position, and then I call moves on all my inputs that were cached. So if I don't sync the transform after rolling my character back, then as far as the game thinks, it's before the rollback position because the next fixed update hasn't ticked yet. And then it's just going to move in addition to where I'm currently at rather than catching up to my current position. So something to keep in mind if you decide to work on server authoritative movement yourself. So let's see. I think I'm pretty good to go. That's not being used. This is basically the character controller. I noticed it has some weird issues, I guess, with determining if you're on the ground. Sometimes it'll say you're not on the ground in update, even though you are. And I don't know why it's doing that, but it does, and it's not like I have any ability to change that behavior. So what I do is I run an if grounded check in update, or rather I set this to the current state of grounded in update. And then I have an is grounded method, which returns true if this is true or if this is true. And that covers my bases for both the update grounded and the fixed update. And it's just another quirk when you have to work with the character controller. I ran into so many interesting issues when I was working with it throughout this process. That's basically how all game dev is. It's a never-ending fight of issues, and that's kind of what makes it fun, I suppose. All right, so I guess I do need to move the code for the camera to the character in some way. I need to think how I want to do that, though. I'm going to think on that super quick, and I'm going to actually go get a drink. So I will be right back. Okay. So I definitely need to have some kind of camera controller on my character. Now, the rotation of my character and the up and down of the camera doesn't need to be server authoritative. I had a conversation with someone that said, why wouldn't I want to do that? It will help me stop spin bots. And it's like, well, if you server authoritative the movement, then what happens if there's a hitch and I'm trying to move my mouse right, for example, and the server says, no, my mouse is right here on my side, but I'm supposed to be here. What happens is my screen's going to go to the right and it's going to snap left, and that's just going to be infuriating. And what advantages do you really gain over syncing or making the rotation server authoritative? You don't gain much. So with that said, I'm not going to do it. It's a bad idea. If it were a good idea, then other games would do it, but they don't. So why try to think you're the smartest person in the room when you have all these other companies that are clearly telling you you're wrong? So I'm going to go ahead and now make a new script which will handle the yaw and the pitch of the camera. Let's call it camera aiming, I guess. I already have one called looking, don't I? Let me delete that. I'm really bad at naming scripts. Okay, stream should be coming back up. All right, so starting back over, I had my, oh jeez, go away Windows, go away. That was my playlist, don't mind that. I mean, unless you want to mind it, I don't really care. I was basically trying to play music over my speakers because I have it hooked up to surround sound, and whenever there's no music for a certain amount of time, it turns off the surround sound, but my monitors and PC are also rigged through that. So in result, when that turned off, it switched my displays and just broke everything. But we're back on track now. So back to what I was doing. Camera. Now I need to decide how I want to do this. I think I'm going to store values inside this script, and I'm going to have the camera pull from it. That seems like... by the way, I said Steam, I meant stream. That's probably obvious though. I think the best way is to just pull from the looking script and then apply those in the camera. So let's make a public vector 2. I'm going to call it look direction. And I'm actually going to make this a get private set current look direction. Let me take a quick look at my camera, see what I'm doing. I will make that a vector 3, actually. Okay, how quickly to rotate yaw. Now I'm going to take this, pop that over into here. how quickly to look up and down. Sounds good. This doesn't belong here, but this is basically to hide the body if I am the owner. I need to move that later, but for now I'll just leave it in there. Okay, so local player, current network identity of the local player. All right. So I actually need to change this to something else. All right, so now what I'm going to do is instead of this, I will do looking equals object.getComponent looking. So now I'm going to grab that looking script from my player and then assign it on the camera, which is a completely separate object. That way I am following good programming practices. So I'm going to do here if looking equals, doesn't equal null, then I can run this code. I don't really need this here. Again, this is just something I need to clean up. I got rid of this part because I didn't like it. Okay, so target position is going to be the same as before. It's going to be the transform position plus the offset. And again, this is just smoothing the position. The rotation, however, is I need to actually drop this code in the looking script. There's a really good chance I'll end up redoing this too, but for now, this is what I want to do. I have another if statement in here. It's not supposed to be somewhere. Oh, maybe not. Okay. So let's see. This will set my up and down of the look direction in a second. I'm going to keep this as rotate because, like I said, I usually hate using Eulers, and this is going to use a Quaternion, and I don't think they'll break anything. We'll see what happens. I don't need this. Okay, so all I'm doing basically is I'm taking the current Euler angles of the transform after applying the yaw, and I'm leaving them as is, but I'm also changing the added pitch. So I'll probably rename next to pitch in a second here. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do it this way, but for now, this is what's happening. You guys can't hear that music, right? Because then I'm going to have to like delete the entire stream. Okay, so this should be pretty easy. Update the position normally. I did all these other calculations already though. So I'm just gonna then do All right, let's see if I broke stuff. All right. Oh, what is going on? Yep, I broke stuff. What did I do? Okay, thanks. Did I accidentally? Did I accidentally move the character in the looking script? Let me just take this out real quick. Okay. Three. Okay, so my character's position is moving when it shouldn't be. That is a big whoops. Yeah, okay. Ah. So we know that the issue is in the looking script now. I'm going to assume it's not the yaw, it's got to be the pitch. So I'm going to just comment this line out real quick. And we're going to assume it's not converting them properly. Probably going to remove that code for a second too. So yeah, so it's definitely the pitch code that's giving it trouble. So first I'm going to just real quickly disable this so I can see my body until I fix this. I'm getting the right access, so that's right. Ah, I'm an idiot. Okay. So what I don't actually want to change the movement here. What I meant to do is I meant to do this. I meant to set the look direction so that the camera could update, not actually update the player transform. All right, so it's kind of working. The issue now, and I know what's going on, is it's locking in my up and down, and the left and right's working. And the reason for that is because I am trying to base it off from the X on the player transform when I should actually be basing it on the X on the looking, or not the looking, but the sorry, on the look direction. So let's do that real quick. What a noob, right? Okay, that probably fixed that. Let's go try it out real quick. All right, yeah, so now it's working just fine. The only issue is that it's inversed, but I know why that is. That's really simple. That's because the Y input inside Unity is actually inversed. So up is actually negative and down is positive. So just keep that in mind if you ever make your own thing. Okay, looking down, looking up, moving. All right, I have successfully moved my code over to the player for handling inputs, and it is no longer controlled on the camera. That is great. Now I'm going to make this its own script because all of this code is entirely related to this, and it's just cluttering my looking script. So I'm going to go back, and then I'll make a new script. I'm going to have to apply namespaces to these, but I will probably do that off camera because you guys don't really need to see that or care to see that. I'm actually just going to take this whole script here and then go back to this one, paste it, get rid of this. Okay, then I can go ahead and delete it from here. So now my looking script is only used for looking, and my body visibility changer is only used to change the body visibility. And this is one thing that really irks me, and I know it's not really any of my concern how you guys do your projects, and I really don't care. But when I see code that has everything thrown into a single file, I want to rip my screen off the stand and out of my computer and just chuck it across the room because it drives me nuts. I don't know. I don't think I'm OCD, but maybe when it comes to code, I am just slightly. And I need to put this on the character now. You can tell I'm really creative with my naming. I don't really have like any creativity in me. I have like a little bit, but it's extremely limited. And MK in the Mirror Discord, if you know him, he will vouch for that as well. He's basically my advisor when it comes to creativity stuff. All right, check. Okay, let's just hit play, make sure everything's working real quick. Can't see my body, looking solid. I need to test and make sure that this is working over the other clients as well. I don't see why it wouldn't be. I just want to make sure. All my stuff over here. I'm gonna make a backup here in a second. I think I'm at a good stopping point here. What I'm going to do next is I will probably just off screen clean up some of that code, work on those external forces merging thing I talked about earlier. And I don't like that it does that. On my left screen I have all these icons expanded out. Button here, you can see it's joining them. Just Windows things, I guess, right? All right, so landed on that guy's head. I can see that he is synchronized just fine. It's a little choppy, but I think that's just my computer. Oh, maybe I'm running over the cone. No, it's definitely a little choppy. I have a strong suspicion though that this is because I am running multiple things here. And the server is, yeah, that's gotta be it. Let me close out of one of these. This computer needs an update, yeah. So I closed out of one, and oh, you know what it is? Yeah, so it is because I was running multiple. That's another big thing that you can learn from my errors. So I have on, or rather I have off vertical sync. So let me just show you. If I go to project settings and I go to quality, I only have one by default just to get it going. And you can see I have VSync off, so don't sync. So basically what this means is that it's going to draw frames as quickly as it possibly can, which is going to really tax your CPU and GPU and whatnot. Most likely your CPU than anything. So whenever I had two instances open like that, my computer was just getting hammered. So if you're testing and you need to run multiple copies of your executable, I highly recommend turning this or this on so that it doesn't murder your computer. All right, well, with that said, I'm going to, like I said, clean up some of that code off screen and probably work on a few other things. Thanks for watching.